What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr Games, and today I am bringing you, as highly requested, a Buster branded profile. So this is obviously using the brand new card of Branded Fusion that we received in the structure deck to kind of show you how the two synergize with Buster Blader. Now the idea is, behind the Branded Fusion, you're easily able to turbo out the Destruction Sword, which in turn negates all of your opponent's dragon effects and shifts them to defense. So straight away you are taking out your opponent's Albion and your opponent's Lubellion, meaning that their Branded Fusion pretty much becomes useless. On top of that as well, against more meta-relevant decks, you can also equip the Buster Blader Destruction Sword, which locks your opponent out of the extra deck, to a monster like the Buster Blader, and he gains attack depending on how many dragon monsters you have. So if you combo that off with the Synchro, you're then going to be getting a very big boss that your opponent can't deal with, and they can't super poly your board. So, with all of that out of the way, I'm going to dive head first into the profile, show you exactly what we've got, as I've got split here. Here are the Buster Blader cards, here are the branded cards, and then obviously the extra deck. I've tried to keep it within a tighter budget, which means there is going to be no Alubas, there are no Fusion Destiny, and there are no Guardian Chimeras. But if you have access to them, I would highly advise putting them in, because it then takes the deck up another power notch. I will also show you the one card combo at the end and kind of how Branded Fusion synergizes well with the deck as well. With all of that out of the way, smash the like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you do not miss out on any more upcoming content. I'm now going to dive head first into the profile and show you everything we've got. So we'll start off with the Buster Blader section as we do. So we've got the two Buster Blader. We do play a pseudo third, which is in the form of the Light Hex Seal, because that can become Buster Blader, or in turn it can also become anything else that you want that can help extend your play. So if you were to play Dragoon, it can become Dark Magician, and obviously one of the Tyrant Dragons that we play in the extra deck as well, it can help that. Your main normal summon of the deck, and when you see the rest of the Despias or the branded plays that I'm making, you can see how we can get to this easily and kind of protect it. So this is part of the reason why you don't want to play Aluba, but if you do have it again, I would put Aluba at 2, because it'll be pretty much treating this deck like the Adventure version, where you're going to be using Aluba off of the back of Branded Opening. So this card is, when it is specifically normal signed, you get to add a Destruction Sword card from your deck to the hand. Now obviously the idea behind that is the Destruction Swords that you're going to be searching is going to be the trap card that lets you send a Destruction Sword and a Buster Blader from deck to the graveyard in order to synchro summon during your opponent's turn, meaning the restrictions of Branded Fusion is not going to affect you and can still help you build your strong board. The best thing about this particular version, when you use it with Branded Fusion itself, is if that card is stopped, you'll still have a Buster Dragon on the board, hopefully, or you would have baited out everything that will hit this card in order to do so and still end with the same board. So again, I'll show you at the end how that works and where you can pretty much pull out as many hand traps against your opponent as possible. We've then got the one Dragon Buster Destruction Sword and the one Wizard Buster. Now ideally you could play 2. The reason I've gone with 1 and 1 is just to show you that both of these have great effects with the current game states. So obviously this one is the tuner, so this one is a bit more important than the Wizard, but the Wizard basically, they can equip themselves from the hand or field to a Buster Blader you control. While this is equipped, your opponent cannot special monsters from the extra deck. While this is equipped, monsters' effects in the graveyard cannot be activated. Now the idea behind this is that you're going to use the Buster Dragon, which is the Synchro, to equip these from the grave. This is why this is a little bit better, because obviously it's pretty much like a continual Scythe lock, which is going to cause your opponent a huge amount of issues. And the best thing about it is you can dodge Super Poly, so you don't even need to worry about that, and kind of go from there. So this can be 2 Destruction Sword, or just for the balance, like if you go up against a rogue matchup or a matchup that they utilise their graveyard more than anything, and they're already locked down by the Buster Dragon effect, you might not need to worry about locking them out of extra deck. You can then rather just lock them out of the graveyard. Continuing on, we've got 2 Where Art Thou. Now, if you wanted to, again, in my previous Buster Blader profile, I did use a lot of extenders, but that was with a different playstyle. You could use Magician's Souls if you want to, but what's really, really nice is Tragedy is a level 1. So if you're able to get Tragedy on the board, which you do through branded opening, you can actually use Where Art Thou to give you basically a 5th copy of your Buster Whelp, and then normal summon it so you don't take the 2000 burn. So again, that's where you're going to get more consistency and more ways of kind of baiting your opponent out to get the board you need. I've got the one reasoning. So at this moment in time, you've got 1s on these 4 here, you've got a 7 on Buster Blader, you've got a 3 on this, you've then got 4 on Albaz, 4 on Kit, 1 on Tragedy, and then I believe it's a 7 or an 8 on Adler Byton. So unless they know exactly what you're playing, they'll call 1. If they don't know what you're playing, which hopefully they don't, they'll probably call 4, which is the most generic, and you've only got 4 of that in there. So this basically becomes a free summon of any of your cards within your deck. And it can also help put your trap cards to the graveyard. Ideally, you want the Destruction Sword in the grave, but you still get protection effects from the rest as well. We've then got the 1/1-for-1. So not only can this be for Tragedy, but mainly it can be for one of your busters here. So if you're going this first, you can turbo out one of these. This can then be equipped. It doesn't need to be played. This is a 41 card deck, so this is probably the first card you'll be like, alright, well I can get rid of that. Foolish Burial. So again, Foolish Burial can send your Wizard or your Buster Dragon Destruction Sword, because then you can equip that with your Synchro. It can also help send your Tragedy from deck to the graveyard, which will then trigger to give you the Adler Byton. Now obviously in this particular build, what we're trying to do is we're trying to maintain the ability to use the Adler Byton effect, because in turn, when you've normal summoned your Buster Whelp, it's not really doing anything else for you. So being able to use the Mirror Jade to get rid of it, again, not only dodgy Super Poly, but it also gives you that ability of doing the Branded in Red combo, which lets you recycle Mirror Jade and on top of that set up like a Guardian Chimera or a Masquerade Dragon in this example, for the pure fact that we're not playing the Guardian Chimera. Then for the track cards of this, Triple Prologue, like I can't wait. This card deserves a foil print. It's so damn good. So you send 1 Destruction Sword card and 1 Buster Blader monster from your deck to the graveyard. Now what makes this even better now is because of the Branded Fusion, we don't need to rely on sending a Destruction Sword to make our fusion. So it gives us the option to send the Destruction Sword this way and a Buster Blader, meaning that we've got this in graveyard so that when we make the Synchro off of this, it can use this effect to equip this to the fusion. So again, it just gives you a bit more speed and a bit more consistency in doing so. Obviously, if you fall back on the 1 card combo where you're not getting this to the graveyard, that's when you want to start sending Destruction Sword of Memories. So this one is, its on-field effect is discard 1 Destruction Sword card to special summon a Buster Blader monster from your deck. Ideally, you're not going to be using that, but you'll have to use it to get it to the graveyard, because you can banish this card from the graveyard to fusion summon 1 Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroying Swordsman from your extra deck, by banishing the fusion materials listed on it from the graveyard. So that's how you get into your boss monster through the natural routes. We're going to be trying to get through to it through the Branded Fusion routes. We've then got 2 Track Trick, and then the final one is the Red Rain. Now, arguably, the Track Trick is basically just becoming additional copies of the Prologue, because keep in mind, if this gets stopped but you get a Trap Trick, you can still get to Prologue, and you only need to activate that 1 trap card that turn, so you don't mind. If you wanted to, you can bump Red Rain up to 2, and then this would become multiple copies of this. If you also wanted to, you could play the Destruction Sword Slash. I couldn't find my copy, but if I could, arguably you could cut Destruction Sword to 1 now that you're going with the Branded Fusion route. Red Rain is such a cool card, because if you control a level 8 or higher Synchro monster, which you will do with your Buster Dragon, you can banish all monsters on the field except the monsters with the highest level. Your fusion is also a level 8 as well, so he will stay around. It basically lets you get rid of the lower level monsters or the higher level monsters should your opponent have them on board. And if you if a Dark Dragon Synchro monster is Synchro summoned to the field while it's in the graveyard, you get to add this card back from the grave to the hand. Again, you've got ways of doing that, because during your turn, keeping in mind the monster you summon off of this will be destroyed during your end phase. You unequipped the Buster Whelp, and then you sink into a Abyss Dragon. So then your board would ideally be an Abyss Dragon plus your Buster Dragon or your Buster Destruction Sword fusion, and then a Lubellion or an Albion. So off of the back of that, if that's all come from like 1 or 2 cards, you're then able to continue to build your board with whatever you have left. So that's it for the Buster Blader cards themselves. Pretty standard on what you're doing with these. And the idea is that you're just trying to get to your Buster Dragon fusion, because it's crazy, crazy good, especially in the branding matchup, because your opponent just can't deal with a card that basically says negate all dragons and shift them to defense. So unless they're going to try and, they can't really hard summon into a Mirror Jade. And then as soon as they try to normal summon like an Aluba, or if they try to normal summon a Despia to try and super poly your Buster Dragon, it's not going to happen. I think like the best thing that they can do is they can go into Dracus Depelio, because they can use your Buster Dragon plus your Buster Blader, as it's a fusion monster and a dart monster. So that's probably your weakest point, and that's something to keep an eye out. We've then got obviously 2 Fallen of Albaz, just for those ones where, again, it's a dragon, so it can be utilised for the Buster Blader Destruction Sword, but it can also be utilised for other stuff as well, whether you want to normal summon it, or just ultimately, if you banish one off of Albion, or your opponent banishes one, you've still got one to keep your plays going. 2 Kit, this is just basically the cheaper option of Aluba. Now the idea is if you open up Kit, you're going to be opening or playing Branded Fusion, or otherwise you normal summon this to get your Branded Fusion. That will then hinder your Buster Blader plays, because you can't normal summon again, but it does give you that option. The idea is that you're going to special summon this after you've activated Branded Fusion, and this will then give you into Branded in red or Branded Opening, and kind of go from there. The Light Hex Seal, so like I said, this is a pseudo Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, Buster Blader, you name it, it will be it. Also a nice little tech is you can send this with the Albaz to make Lubellion instead of Albion as well. So like you turn this, make this Albaz, and then this is the Dark Monster, which is really kind of cool. Then we've gone with Triple Tragedy. So because I've tried to keep the cost down on this, I've gone with 3 Tragedy instead of 2 with 3 Aluba. Now the reason I've done this is because this is the card that I actually want to summon off the Branded Opening. Now by doing so, obviously it makes it a little bit more difficult, because if I wanted to, I could just discard this off the Branded Opening, trigger the effect, search the Adlerbyton. But the idea is that by getting this to the board, I'm ideally playing to fuse it. If not, then I'll add it. But the idea is that when I get this to the board, or when I get it off of the summon and then get the search of the Adlerbyton, it puts a Despia monster on the board for me, it discards a card for me as well, and then it pretty much sets up all the plays that I need to. The idea of this combo is that you need to get to Adlerbyton, and that will then help you with your Branded in red plays as well. Keeping in mind as well, because it's a level 1, that's where the Where Art Thou comes in, because if you open up, for example, Branded Opening, plus a discard and then Where Art Thou, that will lead you with a Tragedy into a Where Art Thou, which leads you into the Buster Whelp. The Buster Whelp then gets normal summon to give you the components you need, and then you can set Tragedy in defense or have Tragedy in defense. Continuing with the branded cards, of course, we've got Triple Opening and Triple Fusion. Keep in mind as well that this has the generic grave effect that if a fusion monster you control would be destroyed by card effect, including your Buster Blade of the Destruction Sword, you can banish this from the graveyard, and then it destroys this instead. Branded Fusion locks you into fusion summons, but like I said, in this particular version, you don't really mind about that. You're ideally trying to turbo this out. You're not really too fussed about the Mirror Jade. If you do get to Branded in red, of course you will have the ability to make the Mirror Jade as well. So it's just kind of utilising the best of the Buster Bladers and the best of the Branded engine as well. 2 Branded in red. Arguably, you could put this to 1 for the pure fact that you're not playing the Guardian Chimera. So what this is ideally going to be searching is, or fusioning, is this will then let you fuse into, ideally, the Masquerade Dragon. But keep in mind as well, it targets a Despia monster or Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard. You add it to the hand, and then you fusion summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing the materials listed on it from your hand or field. So again, keep in mind that if you do this, add back the Albaz and banish a Buster Blader from the hand and Albaz, you get into your Buster Blader, the Dragon Knight as well. So if they get rid of this, and they're like, cool, I'm not under a lock again, you go, yep, no, Branded in red, bring back Fuse, bring out another one, which is why obviously you play multiple. Not to mention as well, you'll be sending the trap card, so you'll have like multiple routes to get to it. So if they try and stop the trap card or anything, Branded in red will still do the job. And then for the hand traps, I've gone with 2 Ghost Mourner and 2 Ash. Obviously you can bump Ash up to 3 if you want, but I've been teching this out and playing around with it, and it actually works out quite nicely for stuff like the Lubellion and the Albion. Now, obviously, it's going to be a little bit less relevant in this particular one, but what it can help with is if my opponent Branded Openings and goes into Aluba, I can drop this on them, and it kind of puts a bit of pressure to them under time as well. That, for example, if you drop this on a Lubellion or an Albion, and it negates its effect, obviously, but if they were to then open up a Branded red and try and fuse with it, they will then burn for the damage. Now, this is best utilised in the Pure Field with the Guardian Chimera, because the way it would then work is they would special summon during their turn. You would activate the Moonlit Chill, you would negate it, and then put them under the pressure that if it leaves the field, it will burn for 2500. That is when you make Guardian Chimera. Guardian Chimera will pop it, and in turn burn them for 2500 as well. So really, really kind of cool interactions, more so with the Guardian Chimera, so this can easily be a Veiler, but it does give you a couple of options to play around with. You can also go with stuff like Ghost Spell, but I feel something like DD Crow might be a little bit better. Imperms, Veilers, all of that is good as well, but people are using Comedy to dodge them. Moving on to the extra deck, for the fusions, we are playing 2 Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordsman. So again, requires Buster Blader and a Dragon type, must be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. It can't attack directly, but this card gains 1000 attack and defense for each Dragon type monster your opponent controls, or is in their graveyard. So, for example, Branded Fusion, send Albaz, straight away that gives this a buff of a K. Lubellion and Albion are both dragons, gives it another buff of a K. So, I don't know why, but you should never be activating Branded Fusion if your opponent has this on board. Like, there's no benefit for you whatsoever. And ideally, they're probably going to put you in a bus a lot before you do that anyway. Off the back of that as well, Dragon-type monsters your opponent controls all change to defense, and dragon monsters in their possession cannot activate their effects, and if it attacks the defense position, it does piercing battle damage. So the idea is you can just stack this guy up to an absolute beast because your opponent's going to fuel it, and then you just attack and pierce. Then we've got the one Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon. Like, I played this in my pure version. It's such a good little tech. It works so well. Because it's 34, it can definitely out a Guardian Chimera, and then it can also out everything on top. Plus, it's unaffected by traps, so in a control matchup, this is where this deck can struggle a little bit, because it doesn't, well, not this deck particularly, but Branded in general, because it doesn't have natural back row outs. So being able to play this, it means it's unaffected by imperms, compulses, not that people play that much today, torrential, stuff like that. So you could adapt a strategy more around him, but that's where the Blue Eyes version comes into play. The best thing about it as well is he just attacks and clears all your opponent's monsters off. Now, it does clash a little bit with Buster Blader because he can't attack directly, but obviously you'd attack this to do the piercing damage, and then you attack this to clear the board off, and then anything else you have on board, you can then swing in for game. We've then got 2s of a lot of the Albaz stuff, so the 2 Lubellion, 2 Albion, and 2 Mirrorjade. Now, you're not going to summon both Albions. You're probably going to summon Lubellion if you've got the discard that you want to get rid of. You'll summon Albion if you don't. But the idea is that Mirrorjade will send an Albion, and that will then set you a Branded in red. So that's where your synergy kind of comes into play to give you additional extensions from that point on. 2 Masquerade Dragon. I mean, the one card that I'm missing that I'd quite like to put in would be the free material Despia monster. So it's the one that requires 1 Despia monster and then a light and a dark. So that could be really, really cool. And it basically lets you revive one of your opponent's monsters special from the graveyard, I believe. So you can kind of bring back their goon. And it's like, you know, why play goon when I can just steal my opponents? And then the final 3 cards, or 4 cards, sorry, are 2 Buster Dragons with the 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. So obviously the idea is you activate the trap card, you bring this guy out, you use this quick effect to equip this with the Buster Whelp, locks your opponent down, they're not going into the extra deck. Then it comes back to your turn, you unequip the Buster Whelp, sync the Buster Whelp with the Buster Dragon to go into Abyss, which gives you a target in Omni Negate. And then during the next turn you activate another trap, you bring this out, put them back under the lock again, and they're just not playing for 2 turns straight. And then the final card is the Verte Anaconda. This can pretty much be anything, but when you're going into... So the idea behind this is, again, game 2, if you don't want to go into Abyss, or you already go into Abyss and then get another monster on the board, or you set up a trap card for this, you can go Verte to bring out a Mirrorjade, and that can kind of let you regain some resources for a Branded in red, so that should your opponent Dark Ruler or anything like that, you've still got plays to make. However, that being said, should you want to go, you know what, I've actually got access to the Destiny engine, I've also got access to Dragoon, and on top of that I've got access to the Chimera, what do I put in? Well, arguably I'd probably say you could cut a Mirrorjade if you wanted to, that's entirely up to you. You could cut a Buster Dragon, again, that's entirely up to you. Verte could be cut because you're just going to go ham. You could cut a Lubellion down to 1 because you won't be playing for a grind game, you'd be playing for just all and out, lock out and win the next turn. And you could even cut down the Masquerade Dragons, it's entirely up to you. That's where the flexibility comes with this deck, but I really, really enjoy it. Like, I like Buster Blader in general, I think it's such a fun kind of art type. It's just a shame that in the past it was very fragile on its normal summon, whereas now we've got a card that basically says Ash me, Imperm me, Veiler me, and then I can still use my normal summon. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the 2-card combo within the deck and how it helps extend your plays further. And obviously the 1-card combo is basically using Buster Whelp, and then you need to try and get another card into the graveyard, so it ultimately turns into a 2-card. If you want to, you can use Lebellion to move the materials back into the deck, but you will need an additional discard. In this combo, you are using just flat out 2 cards. It is as what you see. So you're going to activate your Branded Fusion, you're going to send from your deck to the graveyard Fauna of Albaz and the Light Hexil. The Light Hexil in the graveyard will treat itself as, of course, Buster Blader, which will make sense in a second. So you summon out your Albion. You're going to use Albion's effect to banish these two, which is then going to let you summon the Buster Blader Destruction Sword. So straight away, you've got your fusion on the board. In the past, you need to be sending the Destruction Sword of Memories in order to get to it. But now what you can do is you can normal summon your Destruction Buster Whelp. That will then let you search your prologue. You pass to your opponent. During your opponent's draw phase, standby phase as early as you possibly can. You activate Prologue to send Buster Blader and Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. You send both of them to the graveyard. Straight away, that gives you your Buster Dragon. And the best thing about that, because you haven't got to banish the materials from the graveyard, you can then trigger the effect of the Buster Dragon. Let me just confirm if this is during a main phase. During your opponent's turn, you can target a Buster Blader monster you control, equipped with 1 destruction monster from the graveyard. This is a quick effect. So again, still in the draw phase, you can use that effect to equip to the Buster the Dragon Destruction Sword. Now, obviously, you'd probably want this board to be a little less super poly targetable, just to kind of be like, yeah, cool, if you've opened it, you're probably going to break the board apart. But in the scenario, if they haven't opened it, not only are all their monsters, like you could hold this back if you really, really wanted to, but you'll still get super poly regardless. But in here, they're not going into the extra deck. Any dragon monster is negated and shifted to defense on their side, and it gains 1,000 attack for each dragon that they control. So it's going to struggle for them to get rid of this at the very least. And if they don't, you tribute it during your turn, and you can bring back the Buster Blader from the graveyard. So you basically turn that into that. And then this card gains 500 attack for each dragon monster your opponent controls on the field or in the graveyard. So ultimately, boom, that's game. And if not, you're unequipped in this and making Abyss Dragon there. And that's just what makes this kind of, the synergy between these two versions very, very good. The skill, again, a couple of little kinks to tweak out and change. Like I said, I think you rely a lot less on the Destruction Sword of Memories. So you could arguably cut this to 1 if you wanted to, but you still want that ability of having it for discard fodder, but also having it for the ability of going the natural route in case you don't get to Branded Fusion. Like I also mentioned as well, if you do have access to Alubas, to Chimeras, to Dragoons, easily put them in. That's just going to take this deck up another level. To cut cards from the main deck, you'd probably just cut the Wizard. From the Buster Blader side, you'd probably cut the 1-for-1. You'd cut down the Red Rain, the Destruction Sword of Memories. I would still personally keep the Trap Trick because I want to get as many copies of this as possible should this get stopped. Yeah, and then just build off the back of there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has given you a couple of ideas. I hope this has kind of lived up to your expectations and given you an idea of how Buster Blader can utilise the new structure deck. And this is just a start. Like I've already done Dark Magician, I've already done Buster Blader, and I'll do Blue Eyes next. And we'll basically see what other fusion decks can utilise and abuse Branded. So it's always nice when an engine like this that comes out in a structure deck is easily accessible to everyone, and it can take old Legacy decks up a notch. So just trying to look past the standard of Blue Eyes Dark Magician Legacy and looking into stuff like Buster Blader and other fusion type decks. Anyway, as absolutely always, guys, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.